Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Happy Wednesday, dear audience. Today we have a great privilege to be joined with an ally, as somebody that's really deeply passionate about care. And as you know, we are on a mission to bring together some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world and spread care. Care is cool, it works, and we're going to talk about it today. And I have the privilege to welcome Heather Younger. I love your your family name, Heather. And she's a founder and CEO, but also a TEDx talker, a leader who cares, a consultant, and she's a best-selling author for The Art of Caring Leadership. Heather, thank you for writing this book, and welcome on The Leaders Who Care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Marian. I appreciate it.
Well, I can't wait to hear your story, Heather, and what really inspired you to spread care. And I just get so enthusiastic when I talk to leaders that really have recognized the power of care.
Yeah, for me, it started way back. I have an interesting background, so. And many people are out there who will see this, maybe know the story, and those who don't won't, but I'll tell you now. So my mom is white and Jewish, and my dad is Black and Christian, or was Black and Christian. He just passed recently. And my mom's parents weren't at all happy about that union. And I was kind of an outcast. I was the literal black sheep of the family. And it was hard. It was a lot of pain in that, felt a lot of rejection and exclusion in that family. But I had one aunt. There was one aunt, my mom's baby sister, who really went out of her way every single time to make me feel included. I remember when my mom and dad moved us from Ohio to Las Vegas, where my dad was going to be working as a stagehand. She would send me this huge box of 8 individually wrapped gifts for every day of Hanukkah, which was a bright spot for me, of course, as a child. But she had that way of doing that. I looked at that box as another extension of the family, and it made me feel, and she made me feel in her own little way, that I was important enough, that I was worthy of her love and affection and to be a part of the family. And so I was 9 at that point, and I just think about her as like that really first clear indication for me of what caring leadership looked like. And it just it went throughout my life. There weren't many others, I have to admit. There maybe were like 3 or 4 others through my professional career who really demonstrated that same care. And it's the way they left me feeling that just inspired me. And so I created this podcast called Leadership with Heart. I still have it. And as I was interviewing people on that show, I think I got to episode 25, and I was interviewing people who were kind of more emotionally intelligent people. I already could sense either someone would refer them to me, or I'd watch them on social, or I'd see, and I kind of bring this person into the fold. So I got to episode 25, and I was like, wow, there's so much goodness here. And for those who don't listen to podcasts, I feel like I need to, put it out in another medium. And that's why I created the book, The Art of Caring Leadership. And it's been wildly successful, actually, the book and the podcast. And I think it is because we all want this. We want to have people who help make us feel this way, that they care for us. We want to learn how to care for others. And so people are just very curious about what that looks like.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that really story. And we all know what it feels to be rejected, not to be recognized at work. And I really, with my line of work for almost 20 years now, having worked in more than 50 countries and speaking to some of the most powerful leaders and CEOs, I know what it feels when the CEO, the leader, is caring or thriving, because they spread that with the team, they spread it with everyone feels when you have that intention, that interest, that joy. So the question is, who cares about the leaders then? how can we have more caring leaders, and who cares about them? I mean, I do personally, but how, how can we really, because I think it's something very powerful here. And on one hand, they need to understand what care is not a weakness. And I would love to hear some of the stories from business perspective. How can we share and show tangible results that actually profits do not go against care? It's actually very positive to care. You actually multiplies it, if anything.
Yes. Yes, I think it's interesting. Well, I think of a story. I do say that, like in the book, I talk about caring leadership isn't all this soft, squishy, touchy-feely thing. It also has an element of accountability, an element of guardrails that are part of it, where we set clear expectations, we hold people accountable for outcomes. It's still care. It's care because if we give no guidance, people are really flailing. People are waiting to be led, and it's unfortunate, but this is just the truth of it. And if we aren't giving any direction or any guidance, we then aren't showing care because they are feeling like they're not successful. And we help them be successful when we give that guidance. The second thing there's two other things I want to broach. One of the other things is this idea of who is caring for the leader. I talk about in my book, the first chapter is, of course, this idea of cultivating your own self-leadership skills. And you have to care for you. And that might mean having your own coach. It might mean going to therapy. It might mean exercising, gardening, hiking, whatever it is you do that fills you up. Because I think that's most important. It's first and foremost that if we can't lead ourselves first, we can't properly lead other people, then they won't be inspired to do more. Then they won't be inspired to give us the results we're looking for inside of our teams and our organizations. So I think that's first and foremost, is that we care for ourselves, and we have to do that in very clear ways, whatever it is that fills us up, that makes us be able to show up as our best selves for our people. And then I think the other thing you talked about was results. And how do we really, point to that? And I can think of, of course, I list this stuff in my book, but I can think of Daniel McCollum, one of my favorite leaders ever, to be honest. He runs an organization that has, 150 employees, and it's called Torrent Consulting. And what he talked to me about was, think he had some kind of some spiritual kind of conversions in the head, in the mind, that, let's say, some really cool stuff. So go back and listen to this episode, go read that part of the book. But he talks about being at this point where he realized that he needed to be in business for something bigger than himself. And he talks about this idea of breathing your personal mission into the people that you lead. And as he started to think about his impact in his workplace, at his organization, he started to see the business grow, because he removed it from, like, let's be looking at revenue all the time, let's be looking at the dollars and cents. And he said, how do we let people become their best selves? And maybe that's with us, and maybe it isn't. And if it is with us, how do we reveal the best in them and help them see the best in themselves? And when we do that, they really start to flourish. And again, they do more, they become more. And then his business really, really took off. And they're one of the top kind of Salesforce contractors, let's say. I'm probably not saying that exactly right, but he's one of the top in the world, I think. And so I just think of him. There's lots of other leaders I think of, but he stands out because he's not some massive company. I can think of massive companies like Gary Ridge and the WD-40 company, who really explains what putting a people first philosophy does for your business from a revenue perspective, which is important. Like I always say to people, listen, I live in the real world. I have my own consultancy. I actually want to make more revenue every year too. But if I go into my interactions as a leader with just exactly what can you do for me all the time, and I'm not thinking about like what's happening on the other side of that. What does the other person need for me to be their best for them, and then to be their best for us? Then it's not going to be a fruitful relationship. So the care, it has to be first and foremost.
No, absolutely. I really, the question that raises here, can a leader, naturally care, or is it something that which can be refined and actually worked on? What do you think? Is it how do you see that?
Someone told me recently in the last year, because I am a person who wants to convert hearts and minds around the world. That's the reason why I write the books and do all the work I do, right? But the issue that what this person told me is that you need to sell mushrooms to mushroom lovers. And so what I mean by that, getting to your point, is if I set out wanting to change the minds of those who might be jerks at work, the ones who did not produce positive experiences for employees or customers, to be honest. And I realize that the people who follow my work and are most impacted by it are those who already have a clue. So they have a baseline of care, a baseline of like wanting to be a better human. And they might not know exactly how to show up in the workplace that way with people they lead, with people who look to them for guidance. That's why they follow me. The jerks are going to be jerks. They're not going to drink the Heather Kool-Aid. They're not going to drink the caring leadership stuff you and I talk about and teach about, because their hearts are not centered there. So I think the key here is, so my answer to your question is I'm not going to be trying to feed those who I can't feed. I'm feeding those who want to be fed. So they have an awareness of a hole that they're leaving in the workplace. And they have a desire to fill that hole and a desire to stick with it, because it's not a one and done situation.
Yeah, but to your point here, I had the privilege to see many leaders over many years. So it wasn't like 5, 10 years. I could observe for 20 years. And what I see is that you are absolutely spot on, that unless people want to care more or want to change, want to transform their character, eh, it's pointless to try and do something if people that are not going to do that or not want to do that. However, there is a point where we change for two reasons: either because we want to, or because we're forced to change. Forced means that events come that you just cannot ignore, that life has reached a point where you no longer can continue doing it this way, whether that's your job or you're being fired or your relationship broke down and all this. So I see that often it can refer as balloon success. You may be successful for a period of time, but there's a lot of emptiness inside and dissatisfaction and often and you realize that later on, like maybe in your 20s you will be okay, 30s, but at some point that will catch up with some of those, as you said, the jerks, and then the thing is, they will be forced to change if they have to live, but the problem is they may not survive. So you either die literally, physically, or you actually change because you have no other choice.
Yeah, and I do think, like, I'm a spiritual person, so I do believe in conversion of hearts, and I do believe events can help change us in some pretty profound ways. On average, however, I think that changing the person who just is not centered on the feelings, the needs, an outward focus, they are super, super centric, centered on themselves. It's just hard. It's just going to be a harder journey. And so what I've decided is, instead of, I'm always like, I want to fight the hard battle. I want to like make sure people like do, whatever. And it's like, I'm going to fight a hard battle, but I'm going to fight a winnable battle. And the winnable battle is someone who has at least an inkling of an awareness and a desire to do the hard work and to stick it out. And if they're not willing to do those things, I'm probably not going to get to their heart too well. But I try. I do a lot of heart work. I wish I could say I was a heart surgeon, but I feel
You're
that
right. We're not here to
do.
change anyone after all. We can only change ourselves. And,
Exactly.
And maybe be an inspiration. But just sometimes it's where I come from is it's difficult to see people making certain decisions that they are going to have consequences that they will impact them negatively. And that's where I'm coming from. But you're right. Until for everything there's a time. And when they maybe later on in life, when things change and they may be open or interested, maybe that's the time to share and talk about, only if they want to and ask you for.
I had one leader. This is just a little side story, but it's kind of related. So I had a leader. He was a great person, but he was really kind of shut off. We get this, you and I, in the work we do.
Yeah.
And he was really kind of like this like shell thing. And so I was leading customer experience at this organization, and I did all I could to let him know, like, I was super interested in helping him, helping his team advance, just because we were working together actually as colleagues. He wasn't reporting to me, but I was. Let's say, the organizational hierarchy, I was kind of more elevated, let's say. But I always would go out of my way and just try to like help his team and like try to communicate with him. And he just was like, he was like, I'm not having it. And you could just sense it, like the body language. And it was about 3 years in. And I remember specifically the day I decided, because he didn't work directly with the customers like I did. So I took him to a customer visit. It was a client visit. And he all the time he was like, "You're just always giving in so much to the customer, and you're just so much of that." Do you know, in front of that customer, he melted like butter. I could not believe, like, he just started like, "Oh, I'll do this for you, and I'll do that," and at that point, like, it was and he heard me advocating for years, and he heard me talking about, but seeing me in the meeting, and then him being in the meeting, hearing and seeing the customer, he just all of a sudden changed his perspective. So sometimes, like, we are trying to like do the thing and get to the heart, but sometimes it's some other catalyst that converts that heart, that makes them see they need to change their ways, how they're behaving. And so I just learned not to get as frustrated when the conversion doesn't happen because of me.
No, absolutely. And since obviously I help leaders fulfill their vision by attracting exceptionally gifted talent, and retaining is another ball game altogether. But I find that the character is very important for the leader to attract those exceptional. I'm talking really people that create billions. And I have many stories to tell you. Billions. I can tell you a story how 14 billions were lost because of ego and character. And so I can tell you some of those, and how much creation was given. But from your experience, what are the most important characteristics or traits of the character of a leader who cares?
I really defined the caring leadership in this book. So I kind of line out 9 behaviors, but let me just give you a few of the most important. The first is what you led on to it to begin with, which is self-leadership. Because we cannot give from an empty cup, but we cannot lead people if we do not lead ourselves. So that is really the first, I call them behaviors more than anything, because I think behavior, it's kind of what you were talking about earlier. Behaviors are something we can adopt. Behaviors are something we can change. So, and we can choose to be consistent or not. That's the first. The second, really, and the most important one, is listening. Creating a culture of listening where people feel safe to tell their truth, where people not only hear, like, see your ears open, see you up and down, hear you repeating what they say, but they see you doing something about it. And they see you keeping them filled in on what that process is to actually take the action you're going to take on their behalf. Listening is probably is the most foundational, because it leads to some of the other things, like making them feel important by recognizing them very consistently, connecting with them, taking that time to be with them one-on-one. Those are some of the things that and we talk about I talk about in the book, and I talk about practically and share stories of how people did it specifically. I think it's really important. But one of the other things I would say, let's just, again, going back to what I said, it sounds so squishy, so touchy-feely in the business world. But if you want people to stay with you, and when they're with you, you want them to be feeling like they are doing meaningful work, and that they are willing to go over and above and innovate for your team and your organization, you have to lean into this caring concept. And that does mean, again, setting very clear goals, setting boundaries, including them in the change that they're seeking and that you're seeking. Holding them accountable when they go way too far off the reservation. So there's a lot of different things that you need to do that aren't, maybe in most people's minds, as touchy-feely as soft skill oriented, but they do produce the results you're looking for, as far as bottom line, less turnover, things like that.
I very much relate to of course, the listening here, and that's not an easy skill to have. Some people have it naturally, others, if they don't have it, maybe it's you need to learn and understand. But how do you create an environment where people really are listened to, not feel, but listen to, really? And if that's not the case, how do you do that in an organization it's not there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue first that there's an act of listening, a behavior of listening, and there is a feeling on the other side. So people will it's magnetic if people know that you have heard them, and they know that you've heard them, not just by the act of leaning in and opening your ears and defining what you've heard, but they do it by all the other things that follow. How much did you take the time to reflect on what it is you heard? How much action are they seeing, and how much are you reporting back to them that the action is tied to their voices, that the feedback they provided is directly related to the action that you're taking, and you're letting them know very incremental times throughout the year that you've heard them, and you're showing them by your actions that you've done so. And on the other end, what does it create for them? It creates a sense of powerful, like I'm powerful. It creates a sense of relief, and a sense of welcome, and a sense of I am important, not just for what I do, but for who I am and the voice I have. So I think those things are super important. And I work, we at Employee Fanatix, that's my firm. We work to help create cultures of listening. We help to show and teach organizations how to listen more effectively and do it in very consistent, process-driven ways. And I don't know about you, but I've always said this, like even in customer experience, that so much of what we have to do as the professional is build in processes that create the feeling on the other end. So that customer experience, employee experience, they really are all based on emotions. People buy from us when they feel good about the purchase. Sometimes they have to buy from us because it's like, oh my gosh, like you said earlier, the pain is so bad, I gotta go over here. But in the end, the feeling is still a sense of relief because I'm gonna have a solution for the pain that I'm going through, right? So that's kind of the way I see it, is that there's kind of a feeling on the other. And if you realize that when people buy from you, or when people stay with you from the employee perspective, it is how they get up in the morning out of bed and they press the snooze, or they get up and they jump up and they're ready to get to you. It is how you make them feel when they are in your environment that determines whether they stay or go, in a huge way.
Oh, this is I observe that, and so much, and I see some of the most successful leaders that were able to build exceptional teams. It's that passion and vision to look forward to coming to work is a great KPI for leadership on one end. And what does people say about you when you're not around? that's a kind of a nice KPI you could have. And I just remember, to your point of the listening skills, and I want to give an example of a great leader that I honor, and this is Nelson Mandela. He was one of the greatest leaders and politicians, and looking at his story and some of the most important leadership skills or abilities he had, apart from many, but one stands out from the rest, I think, in many different ways. And as he was a child, his father used to take him around the tribal meetings. And those tribal meetings were quite a few people, often 12, 14 people. And then what he taught him, a very important lesson, he taught him to listen everyone around the tribe to say what they think, what they do, and wait patiently. He taught him to be not only to listen, but to be the last one to speak. And that stayed with him and made a profound difference on what he achieved as a leader. So that's maybe something that very much resonates with you, with what you do, and the great work that you're helping organizations. So because being last one to speak gives you, first of all, understanding. Maybe you have a chance to change and be open to a better opinion before you share, rather than you may be a great leader and very enthusiastic and inspirational, but if you come in and just drop it off before you heard everyone else, it might be a great thing, but somebody might be with a better, and they may never share that. You've lost that opportunity.
Oh, I love that.
And I think it's really here, for the leaders that you serve and help. Yeah, if there's one thing they need to do is learn to be the last one to speak. So
yes, I remember Andy Bowen did that. He's somebody that I interviewed for the book too, and he said that, and I was like, wow, I love that. I really never had that as a philosophy necessarily, and I think it does like create a sense of safety too, because you're right. If you speak up first, and the people around you are like, well, if I want to say something counter to that, now I'm saying something counter to the CEO or to the director or to the manager, and I don't want to do that. And so then you're right. Then there could be a huge blind spot there.
Absolutely.
Because you didn't hear the other side. So that's good. Very good.
And do you think, can you care too much? It's like, can care me too much, and make it could be a bad thing, caring too much. In what stage?
I think it depends on how the behaviors that are exhibited. Because remember, I think that care can be defined by behaviors, and
Yeah.
if you're caring to the extent that you're not setting clear expectations because you don't want to have a course correction, like you don't want to help them course correct because they're going down a road and you see it and you're like, oh, let's just do a little tweak here, and you don't do that because you just in your mind, you're like, let me overly empower, but I'm empowering by abdicating my responsibility as their leader to really help them fix the direction. Then I think that then it's to be potential that that your behaviors of care would be over exhibited. I'm going to say this though, and just who I am. I think that like exhibiting care and compassion, concern and kindness is something I'd rather spill over with than be the opposite. So
Hmm.
I lead that way. It's whatever. I have weaknesses, and I'd rather my weakness be that my heart's right here, that I'm like that I'm always like feeling deeply, that I want to go act on things, that I'm looking all the time for ways to empower and uplift. I'd rather be that person, and people be like, dang, she's a little bit. And I'm telling you, that's happened. I worked at an organization, and we were doing we were in a group of 360s, all the leadership team. And I remember my comments specifically from my colleagues going, why, like, how in the heck does Heather have so much time to be recognizing people, whether they report to her or not, like all this time uplifting people, like, does she have not other work to do? And I was like, I'm not serious. There were like multiple people mentioned that. And it's like, well, this is just who I am. I lead that way, whether I have a title or not. I show up, I choose that way. And so I rather spill over with that, even if it's a little much, than to be on the opposite side and be too conservative with it. And the people on the other end don't feel my care. So that's where I'm at.
On how do you take care of yourself then? Because you do so much care to spill over, you got to like really take care of yourself. I'd love to hear
Yes.
how do you
Yes.
keep your cup full, and what's your practices?
That's usually most people's questions, because most people are super exhausted when they see what I do in a day. And when I start,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
have to say that the very first thing I do start actually on me. So my day starts with a focus on me. So there's thought reflection, then there's
What
I
time
work
do you wake
out.
up? Let's start with your
I
real
actually,
day.
I actually don't usually wake up before 5:45. So I'm not like a 4 a.m. get upper person. So at 5:45, 6 o'clock, I'm up. I'm hopping out of bed, and then I go right downstairs and I start on my workout. So I have a workout, I do that, and that's Monday through Saturday. I give Sunday off on that, and then I come upstairs and I make sure I don't set my day to start too early, so I can have my time to have my particular breakfast, and I have the same breakfast every day unless I'm traveling. And it's just like, it sounds funny, but it's the small things that help fill people up too. It doesn't mean I do take spa days, or I go get like my nails and toes done. I go on walks with my dog. I do daily, prayer. There's those types of things they're all like little things that when you add up throughout the day, you can feel filled up. If I didn't, for example, though, get up and do my workout, I didn't have my breakfast, like I don't do those practices, then at the end of the day, I'm actually a little irritated. I didn't mention that I have 4 children. 3 of them are still home, 3 boys, and 1 girl's in college now. And so
Wow.
that's an exhausting process, but I also use them as my filler upper. They're kind of like the gasoline that goes in Heather's tank. So I hang with them, and I chill with them, and I cuddle with them, and we go on walks, and I go to their games, and it's not work to me. It fills me up. So,
How
there you
old are
go.
they? How old are they?
12, 15, 17, and 19.
Wow. Well
Yeah.
done, you. This is impressive. This is
Well,
really,
I have an amazing husband, so I think like it's a team effort.
well,
Let's put it that way.
that just is a moment to honor your husband as well, because I think this is, I know what it takes, and I just want to say thank to my wife, because we only have one for now, but we are praying for more, so hopefully that will grow. But it's just, we know how much of a hard work is with one, never mind with four. I mean, wow.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I mean, and I get one who gives me, crap. Let's just say he'll say, "Well, you're not a stay-at-home mom, so you shouldn't act like." But then he'll text me and go, "But can you wash these clothes today?" And I'm like, "I am on business call. Like I'm an executive, but I'm supposed to be like, because I'm a home-based. My business is home-based. I have clients all over the world, and I see them here and there. You know what I mean? And so it's just so funny how his expectations are like, you're not a stay-at-home mom, and so like stop trying to like do this and do that and do that like stay-at-home mom." And then he'll text me, "Can you wash these things, or can you stick this in the dryer?" I'm like, I thought I wasn't a stay-at-home mom. It's funny. This is the caring leadership extends, all the way around. In fact, I like to think that I work really, really hard at embodying caring leadership in any space I'm in. Do I succeed every single time? Absolutely not. I give myself a scorecard though, and I look at it and I evaluate myself, at the end of every day and see, how did I treat people? Did I come off one way or another? Was I too centered on me and not on others? I do that evaluation.
Thank you for sharing that. And just now you mentioned that you have teenage children, and I'm deeply very passionate about the next generation of leadership and really building wealth for generations, and giving stage to caring leaders it's really an honor to be a guidance for them. And what would you say to the next generation of leaders? What it actually means to lead with care?
I mean, caring leadership, I define it as showing concern and kindness towards those who look to you for guidance and leadership. And the reason why I want to say that guidance portion is people often think that leadership requires a title. It does not. Those who have a title have even more of a responsibility, but I see the role of just all of our roles, whether you're 12 years old, whether you're 15 years old, to be super considerate, to be thinking about other people, to be watching how they are around you, and to be asking questions, probing, being curious, seeking to be kind of service to those around you, so that care is, in my mind, very broad, and that everybody is included in the need to do so, not just those who have a supervisor, manager, director, VP, C-suite title. It includes you too.
I love that. And Era, you mentioned earlier, obviously, a great example from your colleague. You mentioned Daniel from Turin Consulting. That was somebody that you aspired to, and you mentioned about spirituality. And for me, obviously, in order to prosper in leadership, you need to prosper in several categories, starting with spirituality, mental prosperity, physical prosperity, financial prosperity, and relationship prosperity. All those matter in order to be prosperous in life, and you got to work on all those categories. And you mentioned about spirituality that played a role in Daniel. Tell me a little bit about that. What are your thoughts about spiritual laws and understanding of how does that come into play in leadership?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on each person, really. I mean, I think there are leaders who maybe don't have a spiritual bent. I mean, I'm a faith-based person, so my faith grounds me in everything I do, and I evaluate or examine, as we call that in my faith, at the end of the day, what I stood for and what was I focusing on and who was driving me and what was driving me. So I feel like it's critical to have that I call a faith foundation, but everybody, is North Stars. They're guided by different things. So
What is your
that's
North
how I
Star?
say.
What guides you?
Well, I mean, I'm a convert. You heard my story earlier. I mean, I don't usually go here, but I'm a convert from Judaism to Catholicism, and so for me, Christianity, I guess, is like a North Star for me. For me, I'm always evaluating. Who are you centered on, and whose journey, like who's driving you? Is it you driving you, or are you looking to the greater, your being, your God, to say, am I following his will? So I'm always evaluating. I evaluate all the time. Oh boy, I'm feeling like this is all about Heather now. I need to step away because I don't I don't want that. I got to figure out the journey I'm on can't be directed by me. I need to be on it, and I need to be on it for a purpose. And so that's me personally. Everybody does their own, has their own journey. I'm not judging anybody on their journey. I just have to hold true to mine.
I very much aspire to. I have curiosity to research all those great leaders, spiritual leaders, and from back in the history, and I've done so much work on it. And personally, for me, what is my North Star is Jesus. Really, when I look at him, to me, he's the greatest carer I ever lived, because looking at what he did. Of course, some people may have opinion. Does he live? Did he not? This is all philosophical and all different opinions. But when I looked at what it did, is one thing to die for a person you love. The other thing is to die for somebody who hates you and say, you know what, forgive them. But when I look at his character, he came to heal, lift, resurrect. He came to do good. And I always wonder why people don't follow Alexander the Great or Chinggis Khan. There's the greatest conquerors of the world, and there's no following. You know what? They've ever conquered, right? But why is Jesus? So, and I looked at it, it's very close to his character, and that's what gives me really that inspiration. So for me, it's not even getting better from what I was yesterday. and trying to get as close as I possibly can to his character, because his character is unbearable. I mean, I haven't seen a person who can be that, blessed and
Perfect.
close. Perfect, exactly.
Perfect. Exactly.
It's,
Yeah.
so for me, that's really,
Mhm.
it's just so fascinating, because there's a respect in all the different religions and different things they've done, but I look at obviously those facts and actions, and just try to kind of explain them in a kind of a systematic and common sense way. They say, okay, well, actions matter, right? We need to look at what you did, and we need to look at the results, because if we are in a conversation and suddenly a new piece of information comes in and say, oh, this guy is a billionaire, suddenly people start to switch their listening more, they pay more attention, because the results matter. So that's why I would look at the results of leaders, and to me, that's how I know. And I look at, because really a good tree cannot give bad fruits. It's
Yeah. I mean, I do think that this might be one place that we differ. Of course, results matter. So, I mean, I am a results driven person. My team will tell you, like, I want results, but I mean, the way we deliver it and how we show appreciation and all the things we do along the way to get the results, I think is the biggest
yeah,
definitive difference,
how
right?
you're
Is
right.
the how, right? And I think too that I. I'm human, so I do the thing you just talked about, which is like you hear the billionaire, or you hear there's something and your ears perk up. But what I work hard at is treating like the person who's serving me by cleaning the toilets and picking up the trash, like in a very similar way to the billionaire. It means a lot to me that the humans in my presence feel a level of importance there, and not that they're less than. And I mess up on this because, again, I'm human. So for me, like that whole, oh, I'm so impressed by the billionaire, oh, I'm so impressed by this star, whatever that is, right? But in the end, if I'm not perfect at this is a struggle for me, and I think everybody else. If I place value on people just based on the results they get all the time, and not for who they are, and who, like, especially as if we are, like, as I'm Christian, I believe that all humans, like, we're all equal in that way, no matter where they're at, if they're homeless, whatever it is, right? So for me, I'm like, am I judging or valuing that person in front of me because they've done more, they've achieved more, they represent more from, like, societal's view? And I double check myself, because I do it. I do it like everybody else does. And it's important to me. So caring leadership does mean there's a lot of the internal work. I'm examining a lot my motives, my behaviors, and my impacts to other people.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing all this view. Final question. What is your really vision or hope for more caring world? If there was no limits, what do you wish for?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I would wish for many of us to remove our barriers, for us to open our hearts to everybody that really needs us, to look deeply in the eyes and the hearts of people who need to be uplifted, especially right now, and people need to know that someone cares for them, like outside in the world, like I'm cared for. Because if you think about right now, we look at the suicide rate and we think about all the mental health crisis that's going on right now. Many people feel lost. They feel helpless, and useless. And if we could just smile more, if we could just lean in and take the time to put the laptop screen down, to put the cell phone away, and to give people our pure presence, that's going to give them the biggest gift they could ever have. We may save a life that way. So that would be my biggest prayer.
Thank you so much, Hera, for making the time today. Really sending you blessings, and keep spreading the care culture. Really appreciate you and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me.